All right, everybody, welcome back to In Progress. It's our weekend roundtable discussion of the political stories, issues, and ideas that are top of mind for progressive folks across Texas this week. I'm Chris Mosier. I'm the podcasting director here at Progress Texas. We're a statewide nonprofit rapid response media organization promoting progressive messages and actions. We are recording this on Friday, January 16th, 2026 at 10:45 a.m. And as we know, news moves super fast, especially here in the Lone Star State, so things may have changed by the time you hear this. Welcome, especially if you're hearing us on Sunday morning on KPFT Radio in Houston, Texas. This week, joined by digital associate Haley Smith. Hello, Haley.
Howdy, howdy.
And we also have, for the very first time on our networks here at our roundtable for In Progress this week, Gabe Rivas, who is a former staffer for Tarrant County Commissioner and political fireball, Alisa Simmons, longtime public servant, Politico there in the Fort Worth area. Gabe, thanks so much for making some time to hang out today. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on the show.
Totally. So our friends in Fort Worth are going to be familiar with the longstanding drama between Commissioner Simmons and Tarrant County Judge and MAGA crusader Tim O'Hare. Alisa Simmons is now running against O'Hare for that top job, and Gabe is running to replace her as Precinct 2 Commissioner. So, Gabe, we're going to dive in a bit deeper into your campaign here in a few minutes. But as we get started here, give us a little bit about your campaign and your reasons for running outside of already almost being in the chair. You're so close.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. As you mentioned, I was the director for community outreach for Commissioner Simmons. So I've been started with the county just before she came into office, was with her on her campaign as campaign manager, and continued that working in the community in Southeast Tarrant County once she came into office. So been a big part of her agenda, making sure we were fighting against the MAGA extremists that we have here in Tarrant County, and want to continue that work. Want to make sure we keep this seat as Commissioner Simmons takes on Tim O'Hare for the county judge role. Absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about now the situation there in Tarrant was kind of a precursor to the redistricting situation that we saw happen statewide in the congressional map. When they decided to shake up that map for the express purpose, purportedly, of adding another Republican to that board. How does that figure into your campaign plans? Like, how has that district changed? Are you facing obstacles because of that change?
Well, with the congressional maps that we had that got pushed through the state level, before they got to that, the lab for the racial gerrymander that we saw at the statewide was here in Tarrant County.
Right.
We kind of got blindsided by this mid-decade redistricting. We kind of knew that they had that on their top of their list of what the MAGA commissioners and judge wanted to do. But they said the quiet part out loud when they said that their goal as Republican commissioners is to get more Republicans elected. They were blatant that this gerrymander, because they know they can't say that it's a racial gerrymander, so they can say it's a political gerrymander, that the whole goal of this is to get another Republican on the court. In Tarrant County, we have a 3-2 court, 3 Republicans, including the county judge, and 2 Democratic commissioners right now. This was just a blatant crack and pack. They put all the Democratic precincts they could into one Commissioner Precinct 1 and cracked away the rest of them. So their goal is to get this seat drawn for former state rep Tony Tinderholt, who's now running in a Republican primary for this seat. But it's still a competitive race. This district, we ended up with a map 7 out of 7 that they pushed through. And map 7 is not as Republican as it would seem. So this is a seat that went Ted Cruz by 1 point against Colin Allred in his last election. So it's a very competitive, very purple district. It's one that, this is my hometown. So I'm born and raised in Arlington. It used to be very southeast Tarrant County district, and now it extends all the way to the far west county line with Parker County. So it's a wacky looking map, but it's still South Tarrant County. And so I'm here for the fight, making sure South Tarrant County gets represented.
Very, very good. I was going to ask you about kind of the political winds as they blow there in Tarrant County. We've seen the Taylor Ramette overperforming, it was expected to do well, but did really, really well. Took, the popular vote and almost avoided a runoff up there. What is your take kind of on the ground in Tarrant County and around Fort Worth on those recent trends? Do you feel that blue breeze blowing in a real way in your daily experience up there?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we saw not only how well Taylor performed, but especially compared to how much he was outspent by the Republican opponents. His current opponent in the runoff is Lee Wamsgams, who's with the Patriot Mobile PAC. And Patriot Mobile PAC, just in the last municipal elections we had in 2025, spent a ton of money trying to control our school boards and city councils. And out of 11 candidates that they endorsed, that Tim O'Hare also endorsed, 11 of those candidates lost. So we've had some major wins, even on the local level with school board and city council, with people doing the work of campaigning, being on the ground, knocking on the door, having those one-on-one conversations that really make the difference in connecting non-habitual voters and voters that just need to hear from their candidates more often to know who to vote for. It's those one-on-one conversations that are really making the difference in these campaigns. So people are fired up. The ground game for Taylor has been amazing. Everyone's been really excited, especially being able to focus on one race instead of a myriad of races when it comes to the general election. So I have a little bit of overlap with Senate District 9 and with my commissioner district that I'm running for. So I've gotten out there for Taylor myself, making sure we can get him over the line.
So we've been hearing about this Patriot Mobile. Could you explain a little bit more about what that is and why it's important to this campaign and this election, and what people across Texas need to know about it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The Patriot Mobile PAC, the Patriot Mobile itself is a mobile phone plan that people can get, that all the money goes directly to funding MAGA right-wing candidates. And so they've specifically targeted local elections, school boards, city councils, places where that big money can make the most difference and influence the pipeline, getting progressive candidates out of the way, making sure they stack the deck with right-wing candidates.
Right on. Yeah, I feel like that's a much better known factor up around the DFW area than it is in other parts of the state.
Yeah. I really had no idea. Like in paying attention to these races in the Dallas DFW area, I keep hearing about this like Patriot Mobile, and I think about it as like a shadowy league of villains that are like scheming in these elections. But I had really no idea that it was an actual like service, and this is like a new interesting, and I wanted, it might just be my biases, sorry, but it feels a little sinister to have this phone plan and it just like funds these elections. I don't know, like those two things should not be connected.
I would definitely follow you into the villainy part of that, Haley, but it's not shadowy. They're pretty blatant about their fundraising purposes. And it's important to note that the Republican candidate in that runoff that's for the state Senate up there in Tarrant County is Lee Wamsgans, who Gabe talked about just a moment ago. She has been an executive working for Patriot Mobile for a good long time, and so she is very intrinsically involved with that and many other North Texas super nefarious right-wing concerns, all the way from the True Texas Project to lots of other things. And so
they had a lot of early wins, and so that really boosted a lot of their fundraising and their goals and how far they wanted to take their objectives and their agenda. Southeast Tarrant County includes Arlington and Mansfield School Board used to be Patriot Mobile controlled.
That's right.
And this last May, 3 of their candidates, some that were already on the school board, got knocked out by progressive candidates that worked together, had a coordinated campaign, had a slate, walked for each other, walked together, and got progressive activists engaged in local elections, which makes the most difference. So we were able to defeat them not only here in Mansfield, but across Tarrant County, Keller, Southlake. A lot of the school board races that were up that had Patriot Mobile candidates all got defeated because of, we still got outspent, but it's the local action that really made a difference.
All sorts of signs that things are swinging blue in that part of the state, which is very much considered a bellwether for how the rest of the state is going to go. And so we're definitely at an encouraging moment for sure. Let's at least embrace that. Up around Tarrant County and DFW. So diving into some of the topics that have come across the news feed this week, of course, ICE is very much top of mind, and we'll get to some stuff regarding ICE. But I've been kind of fixated on this new polling, Emerson College polling that dropped about midweek that said a lot of interesting things about a couple of different races that are top of mind for Texas progressives right now, in particular the Senate race. That shows, I think, perhaps a little unexpectedly, and you guys, share your thoughts about this, however you think. James Tallarico currently holding an 8-point lead over Jasmine Crockett. Sorry, a 9-point lead over Jasmine Crockett, according to this polling. I think it's clear that Jasmine Crockett has a higher degree of national celebrity than James Tallarico does. However, James Tallarico has been perhaps a bit more of an organic sensation than Jasmine Crockett has been just over maybe the last year or so, or certainly since the time when he decided he was going to run for the Senate. Any insights that either of you guys might have? I'll start with you, Haley, here. Any surprise perhaps in this lead that we see at the moment, for sure? Polls are polls. Let's keep that in mind. It's a snapshot in time. But interesting to see this lead for James Tallarico over Jasmine Crockett at the moment.
I'm not surprised by this at all, honestly. I think it's the same reason that these very polarizing figures might perform better in a primary where you're trying to target, ideologically very committed voters, probably a little bit more on the more extreme side. But in a general election, I think especially in this political climate, there's a lot of fatigue. People aren't going to want to go for somebody who's just polarizing to be polarizing. And I'm not sure if you guys are fans of the Las Culturistas podcast.
Don't know that one.
Bowen Yang and Matt something. I'm forgetting the name of the other one. Sorry. But they had a little bit of a Twitter controversy this week because they said some things about Jasmine Crockett. And it was something along the lines of like, don't waste your money donating to Jasmine Crockett or something. It was a little flippant and people were a little upset about that. But I think the sentiment there is just that a lot of people are seeing Jasmine as this polarizing figure. But I think I agree in that James has a little bit more of an organic, down to earth, your friendly neighbor kind of vibe. And so I'm not surprised that he's polling a little bit better than Jasmine at this time. But like you said, it's a snapshot. Things could change, but that is definitely where I see the winds of change headed.
Considering the fact that that Congresswoman Crockett jumped into the race as late as she did, this is some very, very early polling. Happens to, of course, it all comes to fruition just in a few weeks here in March as the primary hits, so it doesn't have a whole lot of time to mature. Gabe, up to North Texas, where Jasmine Crockett is a local celebrity as well as a national and statewide celebrity. Do you see any surprise in what we're seeing from this Emerson poll?
Well, I mean, absolutely. What you're saying is a snapshot in time. I think Tallarico is benefiting quite a bit from having announced long time ago. People up in this area that I talked to about this race were very underwhelmed with Colin Allred's possibilities of running for Senate, and we're very behind Tallarico as his alternative. And of course, that's just in conversations. But we're going to have to see if that kind of a shift happens the more we hear from Jasmine as a Senate candidate. A lot of people know her as a congresswoman and before that as a state rep up here in the Dallas area. Where I live, we just got gerrymandered into Congressional District 30. So some people here were excited to have her as their congresswoman and would rather have her as their congresswoman maybe than see her run for Senate and lose out on her representation there in Congress. So I think it's going to be quickly shifting sands. We got early voting here in a month, but things are going to happen fast, I think.
That's right. And it's important to kind of make that distinction too. It's easy to gloss over the differences between serving in the Senate and serving in the House. When you're serving in the House, you're serving your hometown and you're the folks back home. In the Senate, of course, you're taking 50% part in serving the entire state, which is a different dynamic altogether, and that's interesting to bring up. I do think back to Haley's point, there is certainly a fine line between a polarizing figure and a fighter. And I would say that it kind of depends on your perspective and maybe your prior ideas about Congresswoman Crockett of which of those two buckets you might place her in. It's easy to see where someone might see her as a polarizing figure. It's also easy to see her as the fighter that we all know her to be, and a very effective one as well. And so definitely way early to make any judgments. However, that primary is coming up here real soon. So another really interesting angle coming out of this Emerson polling situation is the situation over on the Republican side. And I'm honestly a little bit shocked by this in some ways. The polling shows that both Jasmine Crockett and James Tallarico trail Senator John Cornyn by 3 to 5 points or so, which is pretty slim, super slim. And I'm not sure what the margin of error on this polling is. So it could be, within that range, within that sort of tie range, very close to it. The same holds not for Ken Paxton, but for Wesley Hunt. Wesley Hunt is trailing by a long shot. He is very, very unlikely to survive the primary at this point, even in a runoff situation. While we're seeing a tie between both James Tallarico and Jasmine Crockett in a November head-to-head with Ken Paxton. This polling reveals Ken Paxton to be an extraordinarily vulnerable Republican nominee for the U.S. Senate. Let's start with you, Haley, on this one. Let you go first this time on this one. Any surprise that quite literally Wesley Hunt showing to outperform Attorney General, the much, much, much more famous Ken Paxton, should he end up the nominee in November?
A part of me is a little surprised, but at this point right now in 2026, Trumpism is a political cancer. You're dying on that ship. You're sinking on that ship. I think Ken Paxton, he has stuck his stake in the Trump agenda, and Wesley Hunt, I don't think is necessarily as pinned down by the regime as Paxton is. And you get a lot of support in the party for supporting Trump, but especially I think in Texas, there's a lot of people who are Republicans who are not Trump Republicans. They're Republicans because their dads were Republicans and their dads' dads were Republicans. It doesn't really surprise me that people are just, checking R next to their name. And the Trump fever, I think, has kind of died off with, SNAP and our national parks and veterans assistance. Those are things people care about. He told everybody he was going to bring down groceries and he didn't. I don't know why he's surprised that people are mad at him for it.
That's very, very interesting. Gabe, kind of putting your political consultant hat on, you've crunched these kind of numbers, professionally for a long time. What does this tell us that the average run-of-the-mill Texas Republican voter thinks about Ken Paxton as opposed to the much lesser-known Wesley Hunt?
Yeah, we talk about, I haven't seen all of the poll numbers from the Emerson poll, but I'm sure in some of those it's going to talk about Paxton's not only name ID, but his favorables versus unfavorables.
Right.
Not always being known is a good thing for a candidate, especially when it's a candidate like Ken Paxton. So the more people know him and have heard of him, have probably seen a negative headline about him. So that's going to affect whether he performs well in November or not. Haley talked about these habit Republican voters that'll vote for the R more so than the name. That's if they get to the polls. There's a likelihood that Republican habit voters may just not want to go turn out and vote for a Senate race if Ken Paxton's at the top of the ticket, or they may just skip that race altogether. So I think they'd be much more likely, your average Republican Texan, to vote for John Cornyn or even a Wesley Hunt than for Paxton if his unfavorables are probably higher than his favorables, even among Republicans.
Speaking of Paxton, are we going to find out what those biblical grounds are anytime soon? Does anybody know the status on that?
I'm assuming that now that we have the divorce records were made public, I think the biblical grounds are based on the fact that Ken Paxton had another affair with another mistress. We'll recall that there was a mistress involved during the impeachment phase that was tied up in the dealings that he had with Nate Paul, the real estate developer, getting her a job and paying for this and paying for that, whatever that was. Since then, another completely separate person whom Attorney General Paxton met on a trip to the Kentucky Derby, and we won't go into that soap opera, but it's a completely different person. I'm pretty sure that biblical grounds, I think that's been settled as having been a second adulterous affair on the part of Ken Paxton. Of course, all of which is definitely figuring in for some Texas Republican voters, but certainly not all. Ken Paxton still sees a fair amount of support from people who know about all the horrible things he's done. This kind of mirrors the support that Donald Trump continues to enjoy with all the horrible things that he has done. And speaking of Donald Trump, should Donald Trump end up endorsing Ken Paxton, he's probably going to be the nominee. And we're in a phase where I think progressive people are hesitant to assume that things won't get more crazy coming out of Trumpville. Does anybody care to make a prediction about what Trump might or might not do with an endorsement in the Texas Senate race on the Republican side? Gabe, you go first.
Ooh, I mean, we're regularly seeing Cornyn's ads about how close to Trump's voting record he's been voting when he's been in the
Right.
Senate. So
Right.
both candidates been trying to court that Trump endorsement. My bet would be that Trump doesn't endorse either, just trying to stay a winner that he wants to stay.
That was gonna be my guess. Is like I think he's gonna call them both losers somehow and not endorse either.
Yeah, I could see, Trump does have certainly have a self-preservation streak that I think he might decide just to steer clear of this one altogether. That wouldn't surprise me at all. Let's shift over to the ICE situation. Of course, last week on In Progress, we were coming out of the killing of Renee Good in Minneapolis. There was a lot of emotion, still a lot of emotion. That situation in Minneapolis has continued to escalate. Let's get you on the record a little bit here, Gabe, joining us for the first time. You weren't with us last week, and we haven't really, let's get a feel from you how you're seeing, now 10 days past that horrible event at the middle of last week. ICE in general, what are you guys seeing maybe in the Fort Worth area? Just your initial thoughts.
Yeah, it's been infuriating, really. It's something that's been really frustrating to see and hear the fear and that these actions that ICE has taken, not only in Minnesota but also here locally. I mean, we're trying to develop community networks here, people get group chats for ICE alerts because people are scared about what's going on. There was a hotel worker in Dallas that recently got fired because she went on social media and let everyone know that there were ICE agents staying in the hotel and make sure they knew that the operations were coming up in Dallas. That's something that I've been trying to do myself, use my social networks, my social media, let people know that if you see something, say something. We have to start talking about ICE as if it's a domestic terrorist organization because their tactics equate to domestic terrorism. So we're using the same kind of counter actions that we had to use for domestic terrorist groups by saying, if you see something, say something. Let's make sure we keep everybody safe, keep everyone alert. It's been, hearing people, basically keeping inside the house and never leaving because they're at fear about what might happen if they go to the grocery store.
It's the situation has morphed from one where, if the idea that if you're a documented citizen, you don't have anything to worry about. And so you shouldn't have to worry about it. Well, that's changed completely with the tactics that we've seen with ICE very much being super rough and detaining U.S. citizens who they, happen to get in their way by their perception, including citizens. And so, if you're a citizen of Hispanic background, you have every reason to be nervous should an ICE agent approach you, regardless of your citizenship status. They have been very, very heavy-handed in Minnesota and Minneapolis, and there's no reason to expect that they won't replicate those tactics in other places. Haley, you were on the pod last week when we were coming out of the Renee Good situation. How have your thoughts morphed on the subject of ICE over the last week?
It hasn't gotten any easier to look at, I think. It's still a very disturbing and frightening situation that's developing across the entire country, including San Marcos and in Kyle, where ICE was spotted literally yesterday. And yeah, I know about it because people were posting about it on their social media saying, hey, look out, ICE is in your area. And it's such a surreal thing to see people posting warnings about the government being in your own city. It's crazy to think about, but there's been a lot of response from people. There's been demonstrations across the country that are still ongoing. And I hesitate to use the word hope because it doesn't feel hopeful right now. If I'm being honest, it really doesn't, but it feels like something, and I'll take something. And just the fact that there are enough people coming together and keeping each other safe and protesting this horrible situation, it feels like something.
So moving along with the ICE situation, another development here in Texas that is not far from where Gabe is up in North Texas, this human warehouse that DHS is developing, one of several across the country. One of them is in the little old town of Hutchins, Texas, which I had never heard of until the story came out. Hutchins is right on the edge of the Metroplex down the southeast part of the Dallas area. There is apparently a warehouse there, not a hospital, not a prison, not something that's been built to house human beings. This is something that's been built to house Amazon goods, great big crates and boxes of things, inanimate objects. Does not have the appropriate, restrooms, cooking facilities, sleeping facilities, any of that stuff. But it has been planned for this to turn into a place to warehouse almost 10,000 people across a network of similar facilities across the country that will be able to house as many as 80,000 people at any given point. A staging, what they say is a staging facility for rapid, and what they would call efficient deportation. Gabe, I'll start with you since you're in the neighborhood up there. Is there news on the ground or vibe on the ground about what's going on with this situation in Hutchins?
I mean, we just started hearing word of it. So, I mean, there's was rumblings about where they're going to start expanding housing units. We've in Tarrant County started working on refurbishing old prisons our old jail that we've had here in the county. The concern has been from the community advocates and activists that any of these refurbishments have been for handling ICE detainees. Our county sheriff here in Tarrant County just had a press conference yesterday about accepting more state grants under the Senate Bill 8 that went through to do ICE enforcement activities in Tarrant County. So our sheriff is going to be using his deputies as ICE enforcement. And so
right.
As those ramp up, I know this Hutchins unit is probably not going to be the last one. We're probably going to see more around the area. I think Bluebonnet is our closest one, and just going to have to kind of keep watching to see. I'm sure there's going to be more coming down the line.
Haley, this thing, it's hard, and I sure don't want to be hyperbolic or, any of that. I don't want to, get beyond what this actually is, but it's really difficult for me to think of what these facilities look like and not think of what's happened in other countries when it's come time to warehouse human beings. We can think back to the Japanese internment here in our country. We can think back to Germany in the 1930s, obviously, and the horrific results from all of that. Do you have any impressions about what's going on with these great big places where they plan to pack thousands of people into places where people are really not supposed to be?
In prepping for this pod, I read the article by Baptist News, and they had pictures of these like warehouse distribution centers, and they look exactly like the same ones you see just like on the side of the highway.
Right.
And it reminds me of how sometimes you see an unmarked car on the road now, and my first thought sometimes is maybe that's ICE, maybe that has people, families kidnapped in there. It's such a surreal and scary time, and for the United States government to be building a distribution center for human beings, the metaphor of like the frog in a boiling pot, like, one day we're just going to wake up and find ourselves here. Well, we're here. The government is disappearing people to El Salvador. This has never been about legal or illegal immigration. This is about distribution centers for people.
Right.
It's scary. And like I said, nothing about this time feels hopeful, but I do feel as though people are starting to realize this is not normal and this should not be happening.
I would say that early on, perhaps, and this is, I don't want to be naive about this, but I am hopeful that just like you say, Haley, that people are noticing this is happening and applying these historic precedents that we have to what is appearing to be developing right now. The benefit that we have right now that Americans didn't have in the early 1940s and Germans didn't have in the early 1930s is the internet and is social media. And so there have been lots of people crowing from the rooftops and growing numbers of people very, very angry about what they see developing with the ICE situation. And lots of people where there's been a lot of action, Minneapolis in particular, have been taking to the streets in active confrontation, which to me is quite heartening to see. I'll pause a second and say that, if you're engaged in that kind of activity, please do take care of yourself and don't cross lines that you don't need to cross. Don't get yourself in more trouble than you have to. But absolutely bear witness for your neighbors and for your neighborhoods and for your towns. Standing up to what's happening right now is super, super important. It's not safe. It's not necessarily safe, but things that are important are not frequently super safe. And that's just the reality that we're in right now. So Gabe Rivas up in Fort Worth, as we start to wind down here, once again, we really, really appreciate the hang today, but I did want to give you a chance to go a little deeper into your campaign. Give us your view on what you plan to do for Tarrant County, serving in that commissioner's court seat, vacated by Alisa Simmons, she's a hero, man. Big shoes from the boss to fill there. Tell us why Tarrant needs Gabe Rivas to be in that seat on the Tarrant County Commissioner's Court.
Absolutely. I mean, as I mentioned a little earlier, we have a 3-2 court right now with 3 Republicans and 2 Democrats. And they're feeling the pressure from the people here needing a change in how we're representing the county government. That's probably part of the reason why we went through this gerrymander last summer, is they can kind of stack the deck as much as they can, that they don't have a court flip. Alisa Simmons will probably win the countywide races. We probably win a lot of our countywide races here in Tarrant County, at least I hope so, in this 26th cycle. But she's not going to be able to be effective as county judge if we lose precinct 2. And so I'm running to continue representing the community that I grew up in, the community that I was born in, making sure the people's voices here are heard in their county government, and to bring the services of Tarrant County to the people that need it the most. I mean, people are, have an issue. We're a very fast growing county. We're over 2.2 million now, and we're feeling the growing pains of a fast growing county. We need to have a better county infrastructure, our roads and bridges. We need to have more county services closer to where people are. In Southeast Tarrant County, that means more sub courthouses for people to receive county services. We need to make sure we're supporting our safety net hospital, JPS, John Peter Smith Hospital. Needs to make sure that we have commissioners in the court that are there to support them and not slash their budget and tax rate. Because without Medicare expansion in Texas, without services being provided for people for their health care, going to the downtown ER in Fort Worth is sometimes people's first time they see a doctor when they get sick. So we need to have more preventative care, more investment up front, so that people are seeing a primary care physician, maybe in a JPS clinic in their neighborhood, before it becomes something that is a greater cost to taxpayers. I want to make sure that we're being transparent with how we're funding our government and make sure that people are engaged in that budgetary process, because there's so many ways that Tarrant County is doing things well, but so many ways that we can do things better. And one of those is here in our county jail. Since our current sheriff, Bill Wayburn, took office in 2017, we've had almost 80 deaths in the county jail. Many people just being neglected. So we need to make sure we have people getting mental and physical health care provided to them. Maybe we need to do something about bail, so we don't have just people crowded in our jail dying that don't need to be there in the first place. They need a diversion program.
Gabe, I hate to interrupt you, but that story, that death toll coming out of that county jail, is something we haven't talked about a whole lot. Would you give us just a few minutes on, for the rest of the state, people who may not have caught that's happening up in Tarrant County? That is one of the deadlier jails in the nation, it seems like.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. We, like I said, we're approaching 80 deaths since 2017 when our current sheriff took office. Our rate of in custody deaths is almost equal to Harris County, which has a population twice as large as us, a jail population more than that. So it's uncharacteristic, and there's so much that can be done about it. Most of that's come from jail overcrowding. We've had a few use of force deaths, instances where literally our jailers have murdered, and then ME's office has declared their deaths a homicide, people in custody. But when we have people in our custody, that means that the county is their custodians. And so most of those deaths are from people experiencing health crises, people who are going to heart attacks, people who are having overdoses. Some of those overdoses have been after the person's been in jail for months. So that also means we need to make sure that our jails aren't letting in more drugs.
Right.
But that overcrowding, that having people in our jails are our biggest health care provider and our biggest mental health care provider. So there's a lot of people that just don't need to be there, and they need to be getting the care they need.
Gabe Rivas up in Fort Worth, man, we appreciate the smart insight, and we're super glad to have crossed paths with you, and we'll have you on again soon. We appreciate the time.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Absolutely. And Haley, thank you for your time too. And Haley, of course, as we know, is our resident college student going at it up there at Texas State in San Marcos. And so good luck with your semester.
Thank you.
Very, very good. Progress Texas is a statewide nonprofit rapid response media organization promoting progressive messages and actions. While campaigns come and go, we're the permanent home for progressive media and action in the Lone Star State. In Progress also airs on KPFT Radio in Houston, 90.1 FM HD2 every Sunday morning at 11 a.m. More information on the radio station can be found at kpft.org. And more information about us and our work is available at progresstexas.org. We'll see you next time.